There we go. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Hey, Daryl. How's the sound? Sound and audio? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Hey, Kaylers Aquatics, welcome to the stream. Hey, Justin Shepard, welcome to the stream. Okay, so we're talking about research. And as my wife so clearly enunciated, hey, Cobweb Caverns, we're talking about library research. We're not talking about scientific research or experimental research or any of those kinds. What I'm trying to get at here is if a new fish keeper, someone that's new to the hobby, goes out and buys a new fish, what research should they have done before they begin to try to take this fish home and keep this fish? Hey, Joseph, welcome to the stream. You're Johnny on the spot today, man. I've been thinking about how I could do this. One of the ways I could do this would be, I'm feeling fine, Joseph. How are you doing? How are things in the islands today? One of the ways I thought about doing this was for you guys to throw a species at me. Maybe something that I don't keep or haven't kept, or maybe it's something that I do keep. What I'm trying to get at is how, as a fish keeper, do I do my research? I go to my local fish store, I find something I really want to have, I've got to have that fish, and then rather than buying it right that moment, if I want it desperately, I'll put a down payment on it and make them hold it for me. You know, I'll give them 20 bucks and say, hold it, let me go do my research, let me see what tank I can put this fish in, or a baddest. Okay, so I have fallen in love with a baddest. Let's see. I'm going to have to look that up. And that is baddest, also known as the blue perch or the blue baddest, is a species of fish in the family Babidae of the order Anabantiformes. So it's an anabantoid, which is something that I don't keep a lot of. It is a small predatory fish that feeds on tiny invertebrates, maximum length around 8 centimeters. Okay, so that's just what I'm getting from my first Google search on my new baddest that I've given $20 to the fish store, and I need to figure out where I can keep this fish. It's a predatory fish that feeds on tiny inverts, so I'm probably not going to put this fish in my shrimp tank. You know, the shrimp tank might be a great place to put a new fish, but this fish is obviously a predator, and it feeds on tiny invertebrates, and I'm just getting this from basic Google, you know, the page that pops up from a basic Google. The conservation status is of least concern from the Encyclopedia of Life. And so what I'm faced with when I just Google baddest is tropical fish for aquariums. Live Aquaria has them for $7.99 in stock. So I didn't put $20 down unless I put $20 down on a group of 6. Seriously Fish has them, It's the little bit that I get blurb here is that it was named in 1822 by Swanson, 1839. It was changed to the Baddis by Bleecker. Baddis, probably derived from a Bengali name for the fish. So it's got the distribution, and I'm going to click on the distribution, and I'm at Seriously Fish, native to the Ganges River system, from the Yamuna River in Himachal Pradesh State, India, to its delta in Bangladesh. So this is, it's also known from the Ganges River tributaries in Nepal, while in India there are additional records from the Mahanadi River system in 2 different Indian states and parts of Assam state, including the city of Guwahati, Kazingara, Kaziranga National Park, and the Dibru River Basin. Okay. When Hamilton described this species, he did so only from field notes and drawings. Therefore, Coander and Brits, 2002, designated a neotype in order to avoid confusion with similar-looking coniders. And the coniders are fish that live in the same area and the same. And from this Seriously Fish site, I also can get water conditions. And it's a temperature of 15 to 25 degrees Celsius, a pH of 6 to 7.5. So we're talking about a slightly acidic type of water condition that this fish comes from. And sorry guys, I'm on a different page, so I'm not watching the chat. And there's quite a bit of notes here, and then a bunch of references. And I would always advise people to look up references when they're really trying to figure something out. But this is just what I've gotten from just going to Google to Seriously Fish. All right, back to the chat. Hey, 54 Punchy, welcome to the stream. How's Pam doing today? Hey, HC Aqua, welcome to the stream. Hey, Mob Guppy, welcome to the stream. What we're doing, folks, is we are trying to help out new aquarists by showing how it is that an accomplished, quote, quote, aquarist, a fish keeper, someone that's been in the business for a while and kind of knows what they're doing, will do research before bringing a fish home, and thereby understanding what exactly that fish requires. And the example offered to me was the baddest fish, which I'm not sure if I've ever kept this fish before. I think I may have. Back in the 80s, I went through a small period of time where I was buying threadfin rainbows and anabands, and I may have kept the baddest, I'm not sure, but I don't remember it very well, and it's not something that sticks out in my memory. So it's a good example for me because it's something that I would need to learn about before I really tried to keep. And my first hit was Google, of course. My second hit on the web was Seriously Fish, which is a fairly reputable site. There are a lot of people that work very diligently to try to keep places like Seriously Fish, up and up to date and with good information for new aquarists to look at. And so I would tend to um, think that most of the information that you would get on a site like that would probably be a good place to start from. So I'm as an aquarist that's just put money down on a group of 6 baddest, and I'm having my local fish store hold them, and I am doing my due diligent research to try to figure out which of my tanks I might be able to keep this fish in that I already have up and running, or maybe I need to set up an entirely new tank, and what would be required for me to do that. Now, the listing in Seriously Fish showed the water being slightly acidic, and slightly acidic water is usually associated with a relatively low or soft TDS, total dissolved solids. And I'm a big believer in totally TDS, testing TDS. So that's probably the way that I would go. So I might go and check all of my tanks and see which one had the lowest TDS, and whichever one that happened to be, I would think about putting that fish in that tank. And would it fit? Do I have room in that tank? Are there things in that tank that the baddest, which sounds like a slightly nippy fish to me just from my initial broaching of the research. It sounds like it might get along with other fish. It sounds like it might not get along with other fish. So I go back to Seriously Fish, and they have a section called Behavior and Compatibility. This species is sluggish with a retiring nature and may be intimidated or outcompeted for food by larger or aggressive species. So this is not an aggressive fish. It's not a fish that's going to terrorize the other tank mates. It's a fish that's going to be terrorized by other tank mates. Certainly do not combine it with territorial benthic fishes unless the aquarium is very large, and never house it with other baddest species since hybridization might occur. Also note that freshwater shrimp of the popular genera Cardinia and Neocaridina may be preyed upon. So I guessed correctly that it should not go in my shrimp tanks. But another thing to think about is Neocaridina shrimp need to be in harder water. They need a higher TDS. And this fish is probably not going to do well in a hard water tank. So I would probably immediately nix any Neocaridina tank that I might have up and running as a potential tank for this fish to go in, because it needs softer, more acidic water. Now, I say that, but the honest truth, hey Oddball Aquatics, welcome to the stream. The honest truth is, and I've thought about this a little bit, the honest truth is we don't know where these fish came from. Which supplier were they bought from? Were they shipped in from Thailand? Did Imperial Tropical down in Florida or one of the other Florida breeders breed this fish and that's where it's coming from? Did this come out of a local hobbyist tank? Is it being kept in the same water that it was shipped in? So if you bought this from a big box local store, Cobweb Caverns wants us to use Celsius. And I can understand you wanting us to use Celsius, but many of us old schoolers are not really still comfortable with Celsius yet. We need it broken down into Fahrenheit. And Kaylor wants to know what's Celsius, and Celsius is the C after the temperature. Most of Europe and England and many places use Celsius, and most of the United States and a few other places use Fahrenheit. And and everybody was talking about how warm it is at their house, and so they were giving temperatures in Fahrenheit or some of them in Celsius. And to do that, you need to be able to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit or Fahrenheit to Celsius. And Cobweb Cavern says freezes at 0. So 32 degrees Fahrenheit is 0 degrees Celsius, and boils at 100. So 100 degrees Celsius is 180 degrees Fahrenheit. And Kaylor asked, what's normal body temperature in C? And my guess would be nurses ain't going to learn that, docs, either. Okay, we're getting far afield of my point that I was trying to make. And my point is, I'm telling people that they need to do their due diligent research on new fish that they want to bring in, that they've fallen in love with at the store, or that they've fallen in love with online. They watch a YouTube video and say, I want that fish. And then they start searching online to find somebody that will ship it to them. And then they start doing their research. And I've been given Batis as an example. And it's a good one because it's not one that I know by heart, that I know all the parameters of well. So I'm going to want to figure out if any of my tanks that I have set up and running will hold this fish. And if not, what do I need to set up so that I can keep this fish? And I briefly looked up what its native habitat requirements are. But then I need to also figure out what is the origin of this fish that I am buying. Was this fish caught in the wild, then shipped to a breeder, and then held in a breeder's tank for a while, and maybe treated with parasitic medication, and then shipped to the big box store where I don't know what the water conditions are exactly. So let's say I go to a big box store and I buy this fish. Chances are that if I talk to the people at the big box store, the counter help, they're not going to be able to tell me where this fish came from. It's not their job to know who the main corporation bought this fish from and where they shipped it in from and then how they got it. All they're worried about is selling it to me. They don't care about all this other information. It's alive in the tank with the water conditions that are in that tank. And so they dip out a bunch of water and put the fish in it, and I take that bag home. And I can test that water. I can pH test it. I can TDS test it. But I'm not really going to know what conditions this fish came out of. I'm going to figure out what the local water supply is giving my big box chain my municipal water supply that the big box chain gets their water from, I'm going to figure out what they've got and what the fish was in when I bought it. But that's not really going to give me a really good clue about where this fish came from. Was it caught in the wild? Was it bred in someone's tank? Was it bred locally in someone's tank? Was it bred in Asia in someone's breeder facility? Was it bred in Florida in a pond? Was it bred in Florida in a tank? I don't really have all the information that I need to take the bag of water that I just got from my big box store and transfer that or compare that with what I've just read about what that fish comes from in its native habitat. So there's a bit of a quandary as to figuring out what water this fish needs right now. I don't want to vary a whole lot from the TDS of the water that I just got the fish in, because I can ask them how long they've had those fish in that tank, and if they tell me a month, then I know that that fish has survived for a month in that tank. Now, if instead I bought this from my local fish store, a mom and pop operation, I can go to the mom and pop running the store and say, where did you get this fish? And they're going to tell me, we got this fish from a distributor in Florida that collects a bunch of the breeding companies in Florida send to this distributor, and then that distributor ships to us. So then I have a clue that the water that that fish came in with to my local store is probably going to be normal Florida water. And I can go look up what most breeder facilities in Florida use for water and what their TDS is, what their pH is, what local ponds in Florida have for water supply. In other words, there's a whole lot more research that goes into figuring out exactly what I need to keep this fish in. Then I also have the luxury of saying to my local mom and pop owner or worker, what are you keeping this fish in? When you ship this fish in, what parameters did you shoot for to keep this fish in? And they may tell you, nah, we just put it in whatever water we have. Because fish will adjust to certain levels of water condition change. It's not like fish can't adjust to small changes in their water condition. And if you net a fish out of a bag and drop a fish into a tank, then they basically come from the air to whatever the conditions in that tank are. So there is a certain amount of leeway. Now, if you net a fish out of highly acidic water, 4.0 pH water, and drop it into liquid rock, that fish is going to have a terrible time adjusting to how hard the water, how high the TDS is in that tank. But if it's a nominal change, let's say from my local fish store, my TDS water, the water from there in the bag is 80 TDS, and I've got 100 TDS coming out of my tap, and that's what's in the tank that I'm putting this fish in, then that fish is not going to have as hard a time adjusting to 100 TDS from 80 than it would to 600 TDS from 80. So this is the kind of things that I want new fish keepers to understand when they are dealing with a new fish that they've never kept before, that they have never had any experience with, that they need to look up what the native habitat of those fish is. And then also they need to understand what kind of water conditions this fish actually came from, i.e., was it bred in the United States? Was it bred in Florida? Was it bred in Michigan in a tank? Was it bred on the far northwest in really soft water? Was it bred in the central part of the United States over the Cambian Shield where the water is liquid rock? Was it bred in Texas where the water is hard? All of these things come together in the process of trying to figure out what kind of water you need to keep this fish in. Also, added to this equation is, do you want this fish to swim around and look pretty in the tank? Or do you want this fish to breed? If you buy discus fish from the wild, straight out of South America, they are going to have a really hard time breeding in hard water. If your water coming out of the tap is really hard, those discus will have a hard time breeding. Now, if you buy from a breeder, one in the United States even, the water that they are kept in and have learned to breed and survive in may be much harder. So you might get away with keeping the locally bred discus in much harder water than you would be able to if you got them wild caught from South America. So all of these things come together in you doing your due diligent research, library research, about this new fish that you are getting and bringing home and trying to fit into a tank that you have. And that's just the water. That doesn't have anything to do with the local fish species that they are used to. This baddest fish, instead of being bad, like the name denotes, this fish is evidently a very shy and retiring fish. If there are larger fish in the tank than it's probably never going to eat because it's going to be scared to death to come out around those fish unless the tank is really big and there's room for it to come out and hide and still eat. So this baddest fish needs to go in a tank with some tetras probably, and not even nippy tetras. There are a lot of tetras that are very nippy. Pacus and piranhas come from the same family as tetras. So those fish would be way too nippy for this little fish. And it is going to require probably having some dither fish on the top of the tank. And since it's from India, my suggestion would be, I have always been a firm believer in keeping, if not biotopes, which are tanks that are like taking a square out of a river in a local habitat and only having fish that come from that region and from that local area. That would be a biotope tank. And biotopes are particularly hard to do, so what a lot of people end up doing is regional biotopes. There may be 5 or 6 rivers in that local region, and they will pick and choose fish from 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different rivers or lakes in that area. Hey, Lumpy Dog, congrats on getting your water changes done. And he's got a New batch of killie eggs pulled from the spawning mop. Grad, Slumpy Dog. Glad to hear it, man. So, I think that it is probably critical that you do your due diligent research on this baddest fish. And I'm going to pull out a volume, if I can get it out of the pile without making a huge mess. And I will show you this volume because this is how I would do it. And here is the volume that I'm showing you. And this is a relatively expensive book. This is my wife's book. I got it for her at Aquatic Experience, where I actually got to meet and spend some time with Heiko Blair, which was on one of my to-do lists. And this is Blair's Biotypes. And it literally talks about different biotypes around the world. So I'm going to go, because I don't know this book all that well, I'm going to go to the glossary, and I'm going to look up baddest. And if I can't look up baddest, then I'm probably going to look up Anabans. But I'm pretty sure I'll be able to find, and I don't find baddest. So let's look up Anabantoids, because I know that's what this is. And a boss. Okay, let's look up India. $98 and 138 to 165. So obviously 138 to 165 is sorry about this. I'm actually looking this up. Okay. So this is the first page on Asia. And it looks like a travel log. But Heiko Blair spent a lot of different time in India. So let's see if we can go to one of the places that I remember seeing in Seriously Fish. About a biotope where the baddest fish is located. Now, India is a huge place, so it may be hard to get an exact match on this. Nope, I don't see an exact match. Okay, well let's use this one as an example. And yes, Kaylor, this is what is called a book. This is a hard copy. This is non-digital. This is analog research source. Lumpy Dog wants to know, I wonder what percentage of first fish tanks are less than 10 gallons and purchased by a parent for a kid. And I'm going to guess, Lumpy Dog, and say that 60% of the first fish tanks purchased are less than 10 gallons and purchased by a parent for a kid. And those are the people that this whole section is about. That's why I'm doing this. So you bought a fish tank, because I want those people to not have a bad experience with that first fish purchase. I want them to enjoy the hobby. I want them to have as much information as possible so that their first experience with fish keeping is one of joy and wonder and not misery and agony, and the goldfish bowl ends up in the garage, or holding pencils, or sitting gathering dust somewhere, and never again do either the kids nor the parents have anything to do with fish. I want them to enjoy their hobby. I want them to learn the wonders of this hobby, and that's why I'm doing this series. So You Bought a Fish Tank, is to keep those people that have just gotten into the hobby from having a bad experience with the hobby and not wanting to have anything to do with it again. All right. So we're in the Maravambaya River in India. And the biotope. This biotope is very beautiful and still not as polluted and destroyed as many other aquatic habitats in this part of India. It has clear water with a slight flow, and in some areas is rich in aquatic vegetation, including along its shoreline. This is why I was able to find a large variety of species living here in harmony. They have a place to find microorganisms and both aquatic and terrestrial insects. Such an untouched biotope offers ample breeding ground for many species and protection for their young. In addition, I found no aquatic predators in this river biotope, as shown. Its bed was full of reddish gravel. And he lists the fishes that he keeps. And to avoid copyright infringement, I highly respect Heiko Blair. I won't tell you that you have to go out and buy this book, but I will tell you that if you are a true aquarist, someone who really cares about their fish, that this book will be an invaluable research place for you to go to time and time and time again. And 54 Punchy Pam says, I bet that at least 60% of those kids and parents would have their eyes glaze over if you started talking hard water, soft water biotypes, though. You may very well be right, Pam. But I am guessing that there are intelligent people who really want this information, who really need this information so that they can understand what they're doing. And I am trying my best to offer them a shot at it. And Lumpy Dog, very early on, in fact, in the first episode of this, and we're in episode 7 now, that's what I talked about, was the nitrogen cycle. Hey, Water Wizard. Hi, all. Have my eye on that book, but it's expensive. It is very expensive, Water Wizard. And yet, I would tell you that it is one of the best purchases that you will make as a lifelong fish keeper. It is well worth the cost. The information in this book is amazing. It will help you no matter where. I mean, my example given to me today was Batis, and while I have not directly found it, I have found a river system in which it would live. It's not listed anywhere, but um, I'm just trying to give you some information that I could research about this Batis batis out of this book. Um, Plants, Limnophilia indica, Elocarus. Well, let me just tell you that there are 6 or 7 plants listed from the biotype, and these would be actual biotype plants. The decor material is fine silica sand and small reddish gravel, some shale or quartz rocks, one large and a couple of smaller driftwood pieces well watered. The chemical water parameters in this biotype were pH 6.61, the conductivity of around 51, and temperature from 28.4 Celsius. In winter, a little less. Filter, light heater, and other suggestions. The filter must have a slow flow, as these species live in slow current habitat. Use a good canister filter. The light should not be too strong all over the tank, but if one insists, have the decor similar to what I have done with the rocky area where the loaches and the garas can find their niche, and add some floating plants as in nature. The heater must be good enough to control the temperature for the winter down to about 24 Celsius. And also you get Heiko's comments. And this is the money, what makes the book worth the money. He's giving the parameters and the species and the flora and the fauna. But here's Heiko's comments. Most of the fish species from such a habitat live in groups of 4 to 6, often more, and especially the members of the genera Berilius, Devaro, and Danio. One should keep this always in mind and not just place 1 or 2 of each in an aquarium. The larger the group of these is, the better they feel at home, and the more natural beauty of such an original biotope can be appreciated. The species Sahyadra Dinsonii must be able to form a group in order to school beautifully, therefore never place less than 6, better like shown here 12. In such a natural environment, do not worry about the availability of the latter, as it is available almost everywhere today in the hobby. Mostly from breeding stock, they will not outgrow the aquarium, as they normally do not reach more than 12 centimeters. Only the similar looking S. chalacadensis will grow much larger. Just be careful during handling, transport, and placing in the tank, as they get easily stressed, but once acclimatized they are easy fishes, especially with their correct tank mates as here. With regards to alternatives, I would like to suggest the following. And I'm not going to read that because, once again, I don't want to get into copyright issues. But I'm just trying to show that if you are willing to make the investment into research possibilities, there are many, 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 many of books like this. There are atlases, there are great books on cichlids, there are great books on each individual species, and while the information may become slightly outdated in 20 or 30 years, it's still valid information. And what Heiko Blair has recorded here in this book, these habitats may not exist pretty soon. So, Water Wizard, I would recommend to you, rather than getting another tank and spending well over the price of this book, that you save up for this book and buy this book before you buy your next tank. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to do that, but it is what I recommend as a lifelong fish keeper, because the investment that you make in this book will save you countless dollars in fish lives that you buy and are unable to take care of and they die, you can easily go out and spend $100 on a fish and kill it and have lost the amount of money that you would have spent on this book. So I think, and this is my personal opinion, it may not be the opinion of most people, and I can understand if people ignore this opinion, but my opinion is that $1 invested in research material on fish keeping is worth $20 invested in the experience of buying a fish and killing it. So I honestly believe that it is incumbent on someone that's not just going to buy a tank, throw some fish in it, watch them swim. When they die, go buy more fish and throw them in there and watch them swim. If that's all you want to do, if all you want to do is have a pretty picture window into the underwater world, then you don't need this book, because you're not going to pay attention to the information that's in it anyway. But if you find yourself 10 years down the road saying, you know, I really liked that last fish that I had before and it died really fast, I want to keep that fish alive, then instead of going and buying that fish, buy this book or buy a book like this, or subscribe to a magazine, or subscribe to an online forum that's paid, like Cichlid Homeroom Companion, that's connected to something like the American Cichlid Association, if it's a cichlid that you want to keep, so that you begin to learn information that's going to keep you from killing those fish. And especially that one fish that you really liked, that you really want to keep alive. So if I'm going to go to my mom and pop local fish store and plunk $20 down on 6 baddest that I want to keep and have never kept before, I have already spent the money on books like this, so that one, I can do my research online and get a bunch of information, and then that research will direct me to one of my books where I have a pretty good library built up of information at hand, so that I can really go into depth about what those fish need. And because those fish are shy and retiring, I'm going to try to avoid putting them in a tank with tank mates that are going to make them feel uncomfortable, that are going to make them feel like they need to run and hide all the time. I'm going to try to put them in a tank with tank mates that will draw out their natural behaviors, some danios for dither fish, so that they know it's safe because the dither fish are out and swimming and not worried or disturbed. And then those fish that hide normally will come out naturally because they know it's safe, because the dither fish are telling them that it's safe. And those dither fish come from their natural habitat, and they understand each other's language perfectly. The baddest will be able to read everything that those danios are saying by their actions. And when you do that, when you set up tanks in such a way that it brings out the natural behavior of the fish, as opposed to just throwing a bunch of fish together in a community tank, then you create a natural setting for those fish, and they feel way more at home than they would in a setting where there's an Oscar trying to eat them every time they come out. You know, it just follows logic and common sense that fish are much more comfortable in a setting that has fish that they understand the body language of, i.e. fish from their local habitat, what they've known all their lives. You know, that's not to say that you can't have community tanks, that it won't work. You can make it work. But fish, you know, Eric Bodrock says, be the fish. And what he means by that is understand what the fish needs so that you can give that fish the best possible setting for them to thrive in. And I guess if I'm done talking book, I need to drop you guys back down to a smaller mug of me. And Water Wizard says, I love true biotypes. Try to do as much as possible. We'll have to save for this book. Water Wizard, I don't think you will be disappointed in this book. Heiko Blair has spent his entire life traveling around the world to multiple continents, countries, biotypes, collecting fish. He loves it. You can look in the man's eyes and see how much he loves being in the wild, collecting fish that no one's ever seen before, or that everyone's seen before. It doesn't matter to him. He loves nature. He loves communing with nature. He loves getting out there in nature and mucking it up, sloshing around in the rivers, squishing through the mud, taking his Heiko Blair capture net and digging through leaf litter and finding the tiniest little creatures in that leaf litter. Hey, Chef. Welcome to the stream, man. Chef, we're talking to new fish keepers, people that have just gone out and bought a fish tank for the first time. And that's the purpose of this latest group of live streams that I'm doing, is trying to help people that are new to the fish keeping hobby have a good experience with the fish keeping hobby, as opposed to a bad experience where they kill a bunch of fish and set all the tanks out in the garage and never have anything to do with it again. It's I think that in our hobby, this is one of the topics that is most pertinent. This is why a lot of people come to YouTube and watch all of our videos. And I would highly recommend that anyone that is new, anyone who is trying to learn about fish keeping as a hobby, as a potential business, look at the names in the chat and go and check out their channels. You can click on a name in the chat, or you can, there are 3 dots at the end of everyone's name. Each line of chat has 3 dots at the end of it, and you can go there and go to that person's channel specifically. And I would highly recommend that you go and look at these people's channels so that you can learn even more about fish keeping. The fish that these people keep, the places they live, are widely varied. So you may find someone in your local area, someone that you might want to get to know, someone that you might learn a great deal from about your local area, local clubs. And that's another place to do great research, is local clubs. And even if your clubs aren't local, even if they're national, in this day and age, it's possible to stay in touch with people from all over the world. They're an email away. They're a phone call away. They're a website chat away. They're a YouTube chat away. So I would also recommend in your arsenal to have a connection with a local or a national or a world club so that you can gain more information about your fish, about your plants, about everything that goes on in your fish tank. And that is another valuable resource for doing research, because not only then do you get someone who has absorbed a great deal of research, but you get someone that has been through many of the same experiences that you're going through already, who can potentially come to your house and help you set up a tank or help you diagnose a disease or illness or help you figure out how to do something. You know, this hobby, the more, once you get multiple tank syndrome and you start having dozens and hundreds of tanks, then it becomes a whole new ball game. Having multiple tanks and trying to take care of them creates whole new issues, and having someone that has that experience, that is going through it or has been through it, can help you to save problems, can help you by saying, oh, this is what I did and it was horrible and I had to try to undo it. I wish I had done this when I set this all up, because I would have saved so much time. And you can take that information, that research, library research, anecdotal information from someone else, and further yourself along much further, because you already have the benefit of their experience. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. If I can think of another area to hit about research, then I'll do another research. If not, I may go to stock. And stock will be fish. And while we've already covered fish a great deal, I still think that there are quite a few areas where we can illuminate new fish keepers' experiences by talking about the stock that they get. Perhaps talking about places where they can get stock, and perhaps talking about what to look for in buying new fish. I may have enough information still left to cover to do one more research, because it's near and dear to my heart and it's something that I really think is important. I hope in all of my YouTubing that people that have watched me and watched my videos understand how near and dear research and information is to me, and how much I think it should be to everyone in the hobby. All right, guys, thanks for spending a little bit of your Saturday with me. And to all you new fish keepers, if you do come here and try to learn information, please let me know how well I have done giving you that information. You don't even have to say a word. You can hit a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or thanks, Chef. I've been watching, Chef. I don't always comment anymore because I'm flipping through, but I'm watching, brother. Pam, you have a great weekend, and good luck, everyone, with your fish keeping, and especially good luck to all you new fish keepers. I hope in some way what I've been talking about will help you and not just